I previously analyzed 3 members of BTS and whether they've had plastic surgery: RM, Jin, and V. But what about the other members of BTS? Let's look at them on this video today. BTS is no doubt the biggest band in the world, and so many people think that the members have had plastic surgery. Well, I've covered 3 of the members already in my last video, and I've covered J-Hope in very good depth on this video linked up here. So now let's take a look at the other 3 members: Jimin, Suga, and Jungkook. His voice is ethereal and he's very recognizable. But has Jimin undergone plastic surgery? Let's start by looking at his high school photograph. As you can see, it looks like a young Jimin. Now let's take a peek at Jimin today. The most common cosmetic surgeries performed on men and women in Korea are eyelid surgeries and nose surgeries, otherwise known as upper blepharoplasty and rhinoplasty. When upper blepharoplasty is performed on Korean eyelids, typically an extra fold is created of the upper eyelid, and that's called a double eyelid surgery. So when we look at Jimin, and you can take a peek at his recent photos and his photo from high school, it doesn't really look like his eyelids have changed. Jimin does not have an extra fold of his upper eyelid, and that's a sign that most likely he has not had eyelid surgery. Well, what about his nose? Jimin has always had a slightly short nose, and if you compare his high school photograph to his more recent photographs, you can see that it looks pretty much the same. Now, sometimes a very minor tweak can be made in a rhinoplasty, where a very small implant can be placed over the top of the nose to make it project a little bit. It's possible that he may have had an implant like that placed, and if you look at some photographs that we have here where he's a little turned to the side, you can see that he has a perfect profile of his nose. But the question is it perfect because an implant was placed, or is it perfect because his nose is just perfect? And I think the jury is still out on this one. If I had to guess, I'd say his nose is probably natural. Well, what about his lips? Jimin has very famously full lips, and if we take a look at his high school photograph, they were full back then too. Well, now let's take a peek at him today. If you take a look at his lips, you can see that Jimin... Oh, wait a minute. That's Ollie London. Scratch that. So when we take Jimin in full, I think he's had very little, if any, plastic surgery done. He just looks this good naturally. My real son's favorite member of BTS is Suga. So has Suga undergone any plastic surgery? Well, let's start by looking at his high school photograph. Apart from having a horrible haircut, Suga looks pretty much the same, I think, as he does now, with one exception. If you take a look at his eyelids from high school and you compare it to this photograph of his eyelids from today, there is a possible minor change there. One popular cosmetic eyelid procedure performed in Korea is called an epicantoplasty, where essentially what it does, it helps to open up the eyelids in the middle or out to the side to make them literally look a bit more open. If it's done with a lot of skill, sometimes you can barely tell that it's been done, and there are no real visible scars from it. I do think it's possible that Suga may have had a medial epicantoplasty performed. And if you look at his eyelids on these photographs from him more recently, you can see that he's got perfect looking eyes. Now, is this due to surgery or is it due to him maturing? It's hard to say, but I would guess it's possibly surgical. Well, what about his nose? Well, let's take a peek once again at his high school photograph, and then let's look at recent photographs of his nose, especially when we turn to the side. And as you can see, he's got a pretty perfect nasal profile. It's quite straight, and this could be the sign of a nasal implant. Or it could be possible that this is natural for him and he just has a naturally great looking profile. And then finally, let's look at his jawline. His jawline in his high school photograph looks like it may be a little bit fuller than it does today. And I do think that this may be due to injections of Botox that can help to shrink the masseter muscle, which is a muscle that causes the jawline to look wider. This is a very, very common procedure out in Korea and here in the United States. And the great thing about it is that there's no real visible signs that it's been done. There's no downtime to it, and it really does work. So if I had to guess, I think that Suga may have undergone a couple of minor surgical procedures with some very, very subtle results. But I do agree that it's possible, as I know a lot of you ARMY are probably thinking right now, that he is completely natural as well. This episode is brought to you by my skincare line, Yoon Beauty. Our products combine natural and organic ingredients with the latest and scientifically proven anti-aging components like vitamin C and retinol. So if you're looking for healthy and youthful skin without the unnecessary chemicals, this is the skincare line for you. Check them out at dryoononline.com and use the coupon code 20OFF to get $20 off your first order over $99. We'll put a link in the caption below. All right, back to the video. Alright, I know you've all been waiting for this one. Has Jungkook had plastic surgery done? Well, Jungkook is my wife and my daughter's favorite member of BTS. I swear millions of women have crushes on this guy. So let's take a look at his face very closely. Let's look at his high school photograph. As you can see here, he looks like a young Jungkook. Let's start by focusing though in on his nose. And if you look at his nose in his high school photograph and you compare it to his more recent pictures, his nose looks like it has been changed. Now, to most people, the changes are pretty subtle, but to me, as a trained plastic surgeon who has performed thousands of rhinoplasties, I do believe that he has undergone rhinoplasty surgery. His nose looks narrower, and it looks like it projects a bit more, and these are two of the telltale potential signs of Asian rhinoplasty. But if you look at this next photograph, you can see that the changes may not be as obvious as you see in some other photographs. So even though I think that he's had a rhinoplasty done, I do think that it was very conservatively performed, and I could see why a lot of people would think that it wasn't done at all. Now let's go back to his high school photograph and let's look at his eyelids. As you can see, Jungkook's eyelids do not appear to have much of a crease in them. But if you look at his more recent photograph, there is a crease there. Do you see a difference there? Now, it is quite subtle, and it is true that some Koreans do naturally have a fold of their upper eyelids, and sometimes even in some people, these folds seem to come and go. So although I don't think 100% that he's had an upper blepharoplasty, I do think it's definitely possible. And if any of the members of BTS have had their upper eyelids done, I think it's probably Jungkook. Now, all the other changes I see in Jungkook's face are changes that we naturally see as people get older. It has become a little more chiseled looking, it has more contours to it, and I don't think that any of that is necessarily due to plastic surgery. So although the jury is still out on Jungkook's eyelids, I do think though he probably had his nose done. Now, I know a lot of you may be huge fans of BTS like myself. You may be ARMY. And seeing a plastic surgeon say that some of the members of BTS may have had plastic surgery can be kind of upsetting. Well, I think it's important to realize, and the reason why I put this out there is because there's so many people that speculate that they've had a ton of work done. And I just think that is completely not true. So I'm here to set the record straight that the members of BTS are not addicted to plastic surgery. But that being said, what do I think that the other members of BTS have had done? RM, V, and Jin. Take a peek at this video right up here where I analyze those three members of BTS and whether I think they've had any work done. Now, if you've been enjoying my videos, please subscribe to my channel, and always remember, eat real food, use clean skincare, and only consider actual plastic surgery as a last resort.